The first Thursday of October usually smelled like salt and old paper in Harbour Haven. By dawn, gulls had already gathered outside the weather-worn Fisherman's Hall, where glass display cases held vellum charts bleached the colour of bone. The annual Antique Map Convention was the closest thing the Little Maine Peninsula had to a gold rush, and this year the board had done the impossible. They'd convinced Dr. Lionel Vexley, the world-celebrated cartographer, to give the keynote. Mail carrier Jude Rivers liked the bustle the convention brought. Her route, a sloping figure 8 along the harbour and up the cedar-crowned bluff, was livelier when visiting scholars booked the B&Bs. But that Thursday morning, as she stepped into the post office to gather her canvas satchel, the usual excited chatter had curdled into dread. "You here yet?" asked Postmaster Dolores, grey bun bristling with static. "Dr. Vexley's dead," before he even opened his mouth. "Car crash?" Jude asked automatically. Dolores shook her head. "Paper cut." Jude waited for the punchline, but Dolores's eyes stayed flat. "They say it was laced with something nasty. Body hit the floor like a dropped sack." Jude's skin prickled. She'd been on the stage crew in high school with the deputy coroner. She'd heard stories of poisons that stopped a heart in 3 breaths. But Harbour Haven was a place where crime meant lobster pot disputes, not murder by razor-thin parchment. "Convention's locked down," Dolores added. "Chief Mallory put barricades around Fisherman's Hall till he sorts things out. Swear I saw agents from Augusta already." Jude swung her satchel over a shoulder. "Tourists still need their postcards, poison or not." Dolores exhaled. "Watch yourself, Jude. Whoever planned this is still out there." Outside, the sky was a mottled pewter. Jude's mail truck, more squeak than engine, coughed awake. She tried to focus on the mundane: water bills, catalogues, glossy convention brochures announcing old lines, new stories. Yet each envelope now looked weaponized. If someone had smeared toxin on one piece of paper, they could smear it on 100. Halfway down Dock Street, Fisherman's Hall emerged through mist. Yellow police tape flapped like cautionary bunting across the entrance. Jude eased the truck to a crawl. She had a bundle for the convention's logistics manager, a wiry woman named Avril Peck, who'd rented the adjoining boathouse as an office. Jude considered detouring, but duty, habit, maybe stubbornness, made her park. A uniformed officer she recognized as Leo Hunt lifted the tape so she could duck under. "Delivery's going to Miss Peck," she explained. "Move quick," Leo muttered. "Mallory's on edge." Inside the boathouse office, crates of bubble-wrapped compasses sat beside boxes marked "Fragile, gilt astrolabes." Avril Peck, red-haired and rumpled, was hunched over her laptop. She flinched when Jude knocked. "Mail," Jude said softly. Avril's eyes were bloodshot. "Tell me you're bringing hazmat gloves too." Jude passed over a small padded envelope and a certified letter. "Only thing lethal on me is 2-day-old coffee breath." Avril attempted a laugh, failed. "We'd just rolled out the showcase map, a 1673 Dutch East India chart, when Vexley sliced his finger. It was barely a nick. He joked about tetanus. 5 minutes later, he wasn't breathing." Avril's shoulders trembled. "I've been cataloguing every scrap he touched." "You think the poison was meant for him specifically?" "I don't know," Avril whispered, "but rumour says he'd uncovered something, a hidden track on one of his restoration projects." A hidden track? A falsified trade route, maybe smuggling. With Vexley gone, so is the proof. Jude absorbed that. So if someone wanted the secret buried, they killed the one man who could read the map, Avril finished. She glanced at the letter Jude had delivered. This is from the Tilling brothers. They're shipping me another trunk of artifacts. I need to sign. Avril's pen hovered, then she froze. You know what? Could you sign for me? I'm not touching a thing until Mallory's people test it. By regulation, Jude wasn't supposed to, but terror lay like frost on Avril's skin. Jude scribbled her initials and left. Back in the truck, Jude replayed Avril's words. Hidden track, smuggling routes. It fit with rumours along her own delivery path. Fishermen complaining of night boats without lanterns, empty barrels washed ashore smelling of gasoline. Harbour Haven's crags hosted more caves than most charts noted. A secret shipping lane could turn millions. Vexley's expertise might have threatened whoever ran the operation. As she climbed the bluff road, Jude spotted a lone figure ahead, tall, dressed in a charcoal overcoat despite the thinning fog. The man flagged her down. She braked. "Are you Miss Rivers?" he asked, British accent crisp. "Who's asking?" "Bastian Harlow, Dr. Vexley's assistant." He handed her a business card engraved with a compass rose. "I was told you cover the entire peninsula. I need something delivered fast, off books." Jude stiffened. "Mail tampering's federal." Harlow's pale eyes darted. "It's to the chief of police. Evidence." From his coat he produced a plastic sleeve. Inside lay a fragment of parchment the size of a bookmark, covered in minute ink scratches. "Why not give it to Officer Hunt an hour ago?" "Couldn't risk chain of custody gaps," Harlow replied. "Too many ears in that hall. You're neutral." "Neutral is also vulnerable," Jude said. "Please." Harlow's voice cracked. "Lionel entrusted me with this piece. He believed someone on the convention committee was dirty. If they discover I still have it..." Jude weighed options. Helping meant stepping deeper into a stranger's nightmare. But Harbour Haven was hers. Poison had seeped into its veins. She nodded. "Get in. I'll drive it." Harlow slid into the passenger seat. Jude turned down Harbour Road toward the station. Yet halfway there, a Lincoln SUV pulled from a side alley, tailing them close. Its grille glared in her mirror. "Friend of yours?" she asked. Harlow shook his head, knuckles whitening around the dashboard handle. Jude accelerated. The Lincoln matched. Ahead, the narrowing cliffs formed Deadman's S-curve, two blind bends hugging a 60-foot drop to rocks. Tourists crept here at 15 miles an hour. She'd peaked at 30 once and still sweated. She flicked the blinker, feinted left, then swerved right onto the restricted maintenance lane used by telecom crews. The Lincoln barreled past the turn, tires shrieking, momentum forcing it wide. Jude's truck rattled over gravel. She followed the maintenance lane until it spat them onto an older forestry path, barely more than twin ruts. Branches whipped the windshield. Harlow gasped. "You've done this before." "Snowstorms," she replied, heart hammering. "We lose paved roads 6 times a winter." After 5 jittery minutes, the path merged with Dries Drive behind the town library. She parked in the shadow of the brick building. "Stay here," she ordered. Doors locked. She sprinted inside with the sleeve. Chief Mallory, a barrel-chested woman whose presence filled any room, stood near the new arrival's desk, arguing into her phone. When she saw Jude, she ended the call. "Tell me you're not smuggling evidence, Rivers." "No smuggling, delivering." Jude handed her the sleeve. In crisp detail, the fragment showed a sliver of coastline, and, etched barely darker than the parchment, a series of double-dashed lines curling into what looked like a tide cavern. Next to it, in faded Latin, someone had scribbled a phrase Mallory translated aloud in high school Latin accent. "The path of silent cargo." That cavity's under Barrow Point, Mallory murmured. Private land, belongs to Simeon Crook. The timber baron? Jude asked. Crook owned half the peninsula's spruce stands and had sponsored the convention's opening gala. Mallory's eyes narrowed. Vexley died at Crook's party last night too. Same toxin, preliminary report says. Harlow, who'd slipped in behind Jude, cleared his throat. Dr. Vexley suspected Crook funded forged maps to legitimize certain maritime shortcuts. The fragment is genuine, 17th century. But the dashes, Lionel thought they were added later to hide modern contraband routes among archival pages. Mallory rubbed her temples. I need more than guesswork. Full map, witnesses. He had the whole sheet, Harlow said, stored in a metal tube inside his hotel safe. You two. Mallory jabbed a finger. Retrieve that map while I file a warrant for Crook's caves. No heroics. Understood? Jude bristled. I carry envelopes, Chief. I don't do heroics. Yet as she and Harlow walked back to the truck, that boast felt flimsy. Someone had just tried to force them off a cliff. The next attempt might succeed. Harlow directed her to the Seafarers' Rest Inn, a Victorian house perched on Sea Lion Bluff. The manager, a corpulent man named Doyle, refused access to any safe without a court order. I can solve that, Harlow said, voice trembling but defiant. Lionel left me power of attorney paperwork. He produced documents. Doyle examined the signatures. Fine, Doyle sighed, but I'm coming. The safe was in Vexley's suite, behind a watercolour of fishing boats. Doyle spun the dial, swung the heavy door, and stepped back. Inside rested a cylindrical aluminum map tube, and nothing else. Harlow exhaled, untouched. But when Doyle passed the tube to him, Jude noticed a faint, dark residue on the aluminum threads. Wait, she yelled, but too late. Harlow had already unscrewed the cap. A tiny metal barb, fixed just inside the rim, grazed his thumb before she could pull it away. Harlow stumbled, gaze hazing. Jude seized his wrist and squeezed, trying to force blood out. Doyle, closet, black pepper, anything that burns. She'd read somewhere irritants could slow certain venoms. Doyle sprinted away. Hollow needle, Harlow rasped, like the paper cut. Stay with me. Jude dragged him to the bathroom, shoved his hand under scalding water. His face blanched. She pinched the base of his thumb, hoping to localize the toxin. Doyle returned with liquid dish detergent and coffee grounds. Jude smeared both onto Harlow's palm, scrubbing viciously. Minutes crawled. At last, the assistant's breathing settled, though sweat poured down his temples. Emergency room, Jude said. Harlow shook. Map first. It's safe inside. She unrolled the parchment over the bed. It depicted the entire Harbour Haven coastline, but something was wrong. The paper had been carefully gutted. A rectangular section from Barrow Point inward was missing. Harlow gaped. They stole the piece in your pocket. The sleeve fragment matches the hole, Jude realized. Vexley separated the most damning part before locking it away. Good thinking, but now the map's incomplete evidence. She tucked the intact chunk safely back into its tube, mindful of the needle trap, then packed everything inside a hotel laundry bag. Harlow's legs wobbled as they descended the stairs. Adrenaline alone moved him. Outside, Jude rang Mallory. We have the tube. Watch the booby trap. Harlow's poisoned but stable. Ambulance is rolling, the chief said. I'm en route to Barrow Point with state troopers. Meet us. Jude loaded Harlow into the passenger seat again, leaning him back. She drove north. The sky bruised, rain sniffed the air. Barrow Point Jut, a skeletal finger of granite, jutted into foam. Simeon Crook's compound squatted inland, a mansion of dark glass and steel at odds with pine forests. Troopers waved Jude through the gate. Mallory stood beside her cruiser, bulletproof vest bulging over flannel. "State forensics will process the tube," she said, taking it with gloved hands. "Caves?" Jude asked. "Behind the house. Crook's throwing tantrums, claims our warrant's faulty. Too bad." Wind knifed their ears as they trekked down a slick boardwalk toward sea cliffs. A yawing wooden hatch opened onto limestone steps. Mallory led, Jude behind her, a trooper at the rear. Moist air tasted of diesel. Halfway down, faint clangs floated up. Mallory signaled silence. They reached a cavern whose mouth was hung with tarps. Beyond, under dim LEDs, lay an assembly line of crates, each stamped with a stylized compass rose. The same rose on Harlow's business card. Jude raised brows. Harlow, noticing, whispered, "Coincidence. It's a popular emblem." Mallory motioned Trooper Miles toward side tunnels. She and Jude advanced. From shadows emerged Simeon Crook, flanked by 2 security guards. "This is private property," he barked. Mallory held firm. "Not anymore. Illegal goods, stolen antiquities, possibly weapons, all bound for foreign buyers." Crook smirked. "All you see are donation materials for museums." "Donation?" Jude repeated. She stepped to a crate, flipped its lid. Inside lay stacks of parchment tubes, plus metallic canisters bearing hazmat symbols. Crook's smirk thinned. "You've made a grave mistake, male girl." "Wrong profession to threaten," Jude replied, adrenaline humming. One guard lunged. Mallory fired a warning shot. The cavern roared in echo. The men froze. Seconds later, Miles radioed. "Found another chamber. Dozens more crates, plus chemical drums labeled ricin precursor." Mallory cuffed Crook as troopers flooded in. Jude exhaled shakily. Back on the surface, paramedics treated Harlow. Rain had begun, washing salt from the air. Later, in the police station conference room, Mallory laid the sleeve fragment beside the gutted map. "Forensics confirms the ink in the dashed route is modern. Crook paid Vexley to authenticate doctored charts to lend historical cover to smuggling lanes leading straight to this cave system. When Vexley balked, Crook rigged the poisoned parchment, first at last night's gala to scare him, then this morning to silence him. But Vexley outsmarted him," Jude said. "Cut out the forged section, passed it to Harlow, locked the rest away." Unfortunately, Crook suspected that, hence the death traps on anything touching Vexley's work. Mallory studied Jude. "You saved lives today, not just Harlow's." Jude shrugged, embarrassed. "Root got interesting is all." "You ever consider detective work?" the chief asked. "I already know every address," Jude quipped. "Why trade my mail truck for a cruiser?" Yet the possibility twined through her. Deliveries would never be ordinary again. Every envelope might hide a secret. But maybe that was fine. Harbour Haven would always need navigators. 2 days later, the convention resumed inside Fisherman's Hall. A drape covered the empty keynote podium. Jude dropped off a stack of sympathy letters at the registration desk, then paused at Vexley's memorial display. Under glass lay the restored map, whole again, the forged dashes erased, and the blank patch seamlessly filled with archival parchment. The accompanying placard read, "In honor of truth over false lines." Avril Peck approached. "They offered me the keynote slot for next year," she confessed. "Terrified, but I said yes, because maps tell stories, and stories, if honest, fight monsters." Jude smiled. "Let's hope next year involves fewer monsters and 0 toxins." Avril squeezed her hand. "Thanks to you, Harbour Haven gets that chance. Outside, Jude returned to her truck. The air smelled of salt and, faintly, of autumn leaves just beginning to decay. She shut the door, started the engine, and steered toward Elm Row, first stop of the afternoon. Rain-washed streets glistened like fresh ink, waiting for new lines to be drawn.